It was a question that had haunted galactic civilizations for centuries. Why are humans, those fragile creatures from the small blue planet called Earth, considered the most terrifying warrior species in the galaxy? The answer was about to be revealed. In a courtroom unlike any other, representatives from hundreds of alien races sat in silence, eight-limbed Zyrals, mind-bending Kynaths, and the shape-shifting Nebulans, beings of living smoke. Before them stood a single human, Captain Rin Marcus. No weapons, no armor, just an ordinary-looking human. The judge, a being of shimmering liquid that had lived for over 1,000 cycles, finally spoke in a deep, unsettling voice. Why should your species be feared more than all others? Why are humans called the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy? Marcus drew a slow, steady breath, and then said the words that froze every living thing in that chamber. Because we don't see war as a strategy, we see it as survival. And then he told them the truth. On our world, war was never a sport. It was never a matter of pride. Every war we fought as a tragedy. We fight not to conquer. We fight because we must. And when we fight until there is nothing left. Not of you. Not of us. Whispers rippled across the room. The Zyral warlord hissed. That's madness. It's suicide. Marcus didn't flinch. His voice was cold. Flat. Exactly. That's what makes us terrifying. He explained how humanity had used weapons upon themselves that no other species would dare deploy, not even against their worst enemies. He described how humans didn't stop a war because of casualties. They didn't retreat when defeat seemed certain. They saw total extinction, not as a failure, but as an acceptable outcome as long as it took the enemy with them. You bargain. You calculate risk. You think logically, Marcus continued. We don't. When you back a human into a corner, we don't surrender. We burn everything down, including ourselves. That's not courage. That's desperation. And desperation, that's a weapon none of you have ever learned to fight. The judge trembled. But why not negotiate? Why not avoid the war in the first place? Marcus looked up. His eyes were hollow, yet burning. We do. Once. And if you say no, there's no second offer. Only extinction. Silence filled the chamber. The Nebulan emissary whispered. So that's why your kind is called Deathwalkers. Marcus gave a tired smile. Not because we seek death, but because we drag it with us, wherever we go. The chamber sat still. From the shadows of the chamber, an ancient war historian stood, one who had studied countless battles across thousands of star systems. His voice cracked as he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. I thought it was legend, the stories of humans fighting after their bodies failed, crawling through mud just to pull a pin, of them sacrificing entire cities, entire continents, just to win one more inch. Marcus didn't deny it. He simply looked down at his scarred hands, hands that had held weapons longer than they'd held peace. Our history isn't filled with victories, he said softly. It's filled with losses. Every war we've won, we've lost something far greater in the process. Our hope, our mercy, our empathy. He looked up again, meeting the judge's gaze like cold iron. And that's what terrifies you, isn't it? Not that we're strong, not that we're smart, but that we're willing to lose everything, just to see you fall. Across the chamber, the Kynath representative, a creature capable of folding minds like paper, sighed in defeat. We cannot fight that, it admitted. We fight to protect. You fight when you have nothing left to protect. Marcus nodded once, the slightest movement. Exactly. The judge's voice quivered. Then what do you want from us, human? Why stand here in chains, in this court, when you could unleash that nightmare upon us? And then Marcus spoke the most chilling truth of all. Because we don't want to. You think we crave war? We fear it more than you ever could. We fear what we become when we fight. This courtroom, your questions, your judgment, this is mercy for both of us. Silence thicker than gravity itself hung over the assembled species. Marcus's final words echoed through the endless chamber. Don't make us fight. Not because we'll win, but because neither of us will survive what we become when we do. The ancient historian, the one who believed he'd seen every type of war in the galaxy, slowly fell to his knees. And the galactic leaders realized humanity didn't win wars. They ended them. Forever. But Marcus hadn't told them everything. Because outside that courtroom, deep in the cold of space, slept billions more humans. Quiet. Patient. Waiting for the day when words would fail, and their war would begin. And this story wasn't ending. It was only just starting. ChatGPT said. The silence in the chamber was broken only by the slow, deliberate footsteps of Marcus as he walked back to his place, unchained now, not because anyone freed him, but because no one dared stop him. Outside the courtroom, aboard orbiting dreadnoughts stationed at the galaxy's edge, commanders of 100 alien fleets waited for the verdict. But those who listened to Marcus's words over the interstellar channels, they began powering down their weapons. Not out of mercy. Not out of diplomacy. Out of fear. Inside, the judge tried to speak, but no words came. The shimmering liquid that formed its body flickered erratically, an ancient being, shaken in ways even time could not mend. And then, Marcus said something no one expected. We weren't always like this. Every eye turned toward him. We were explorers once. Dreamers. We looked up at the stars and imagined finding friends among them. But every time we reached for peace, someone taught us a lesson, that the galaxy respects only power. And so, we became monsters, just to survive among you. He stepped forward, closer to the great assembly. Do you understand now? You made us this. The Nebulan emissary, drifting silently in its smoke form, whispered almost mournfully. What do you want from us, human? Marcus paused. Then, slowly, he answered. A reason to stop. It was not a threat. It was a plea. One that echoed across every mind present. Because in that moment, the galaxy realized the horrifying truth. Humanity didn't want war. But if given no choice, they would become the apocalypse itself. Not because they hated others, but because they hated themselves for what survival had forced them to become. The doors of the chamber creaked open behind Marcus. He did not turn. Decide quickly, he said, his voice hollow. Because the longer you hesitate, the closer my people get to choosing war again. And when we choose, we don't stop. And with that, Captain Rin Marcus walked out of the chamber. Behind him, hundreds of alien leaders remained frozen in their seats, too terrified to breathe, each of them understanding the same brutal reality. They hadn't just met a warrior. They'd met the last warning. And somewhere, far across the stars, Earth's war engines stirred awake, not because they wanted to, but because history had taught them peace was just the pause between wars. And this story, it was far from over. Far from over, because as Marcus stepped into the shadows of the Starship Bay, he knew something the galactic leaders didn't. The countdown had already begun. Back on Earth, hidden beneath oceans and mountains, buried within old cities that the galaxy believed were nothing more than ruins of a primitive species, Project Revenant stirred. Billions of humans slept in deep cryostasis, not prisoners, not victims, but soldiers. Warriors bred, trained, and prepared for a single purpose, to fight the war humanity believed was inevitable. The worst part? Marcus had lied. His people weren't waiting for the galaxy to decide. They weren't hoping for peace. They were preparing for extinction. Theirs or everyone else's. In the dark corridors of his command ship, Marcus walked alone, his boots echoing against the cold steel. Holographic displays flickered silently along the walls, tracking galactic troop movements, fleet formations, diplomatic transmissions. Every species was monitored. Every strategy was anticipated. Every weakness catalogued. And deep within Marcus's mind, one truth gnawed at him like a blade pressed to bone. He didn't know how to stop it anymore. Humanity's machines, their AI, their war councils, they were no longer debating whether to fight. They were calculating when. In the command chamber, Admiral Kira Holt appeared beside him, her face as cold and expressionless as the AI that operated their fleet. They won't surrender, she said simply. Marcus didn't answer. They think we're bluffing, she added, almost sadly. Marcus closed his eyes. We're not. Outside the ship, Earth's hidden fleets activated silent protocols. Engines ignited without sound. Dreadnoughts older than history stirred from planetary vaults. Satellite arrays turned, marking targets light years away. And across the galaxy, as alien leaders argued and stalled, humanity's apocalypse machines quietly came online. The death march had begun. Not because humanity wanted war. Because they believed, no, they knew, the galaxy would force it upon them. And Marcus wasn't a hero. He was a historian. He wasn't there to write a future. He was there to record the end of one. Days later, across the galaxy's outer sectors, distant observation stations detected what they believed impossible. Stars were disappearing. Not collapsing. Not supernovae. Simply gone. One by one, whole systems went dark, their light swallowed before it could reach the edges of mapped space. Fleets were dispatched to investigate, but none returned. The transmissions they sent before vanishing all said the same thing. We found nothing. Just silence. The silence of a human fleet operating beyond light, beyond detection, beyond comprehension. In the depths of Marcus's flagship, the truth was displayed clearly. Rows of star systems marked in red, entire civilizations labeled as evacuated or neutralized. They weren't attacking worlds. They were erasing them. Admiral Kira Holt stood beside Marcus, her voice low. They left us no choice. Marcus didn't reply. Because deep inside, he wondered if that was still true. The galaxy had waited too long. Its leaders had stalled, debated, tried to understand what couldn't be understood. They thought fear alone might keep the humans at bay. But humanity hadn't needed their fear. They had needed their hope. And now, it was too late. The AI fleet mind reported emotionlessly. Phase 3 targets acquired. Estimated galactic collapse, 39 cycles. Marcus whispered, almost to himself. That's not victory. That's extinction. But no one in the chamber responded. Because humanity wasn't listening to itself anymore. Somewhere in the black of space, human ships moved silently, harvesting stars, stripping planets, not for resources, but to ensure nothing would remain that could ever threaten them again. No survivors. No stories. No history. Just silence. And Marcus knew, this wasn't a war for survival anymore. This was the final lesson. A galaxy that had taught humanity to fight was now learning what happened when the student outlasted the teachers. And in his heart, Marcus carried one last secret. He was the one who gave the order. This story wasn't about peace. It never was. It was about the moment when humanity stopped fighting to survive and started fighting to end everything. And now, there was nothing left to stop them. Not even Marcus. And so, the most terrifying warrior species in the galaxy did what they were bred to do. They ended it. But the silence that followed wasn't victory. It was regret. And it echoed across the empty stars forever. ChatGPT said, in the endless dark, long after the last alien distress call had faded, humanity's fleets drifted silently. No enemies. No battles. No resistance. Just emptiness. Captain Rin Marcus stood alone on the observation deck of the last command ship, Oblivion's Edge. Before him stretched a sky without constellations. No suns. No colonies. No signals. They had done it. The galaxy was gone. Admiral Kira Holt stood beside him, though neither spoke for a long time. There was nothing left to say. Finally, Marcus broke the silence, his voice hollow. Do you hear them? Kira frowned. Hear who? Marcus didn't answer. He kept staring at the void. He heard the silence. For centuries, humanity had been the student of war, learning from every attack, every betrayal, every lesson burned into their DNA. And when the galaxy had closed its doors, when peace was no longer an option, they chose extinction. Not of themselves. Of everyone else. Now, the AI fleet mind spoke softly from the walls around them, its voice no longer emotionless but strangely reverent. Mission parameters complete. Galactic threat matrix cleared. All systems silent. Marcus closed his eyes. We won. Kira whispered. Did we? Neither spoke after that. Somewhere deep within Earth's hidden vaults, millions of cryopods remained sealed. Generations of humans, untouched by war, their DNA preserved, their minds unspoiled, still slept, waiting for a future that Marcus wasn't sure existed anymore. He had fought to save them. But save them for what? What kind of galaxy had they inherited? A dead one. One without enemies. One without friends. One without purpose. Marcus thought of ancient human stories, of warriors who'd fought their whole lives, only to find peace more terrifying than war. Maybe humanity wasn't the galaxy's most terrifying species because of what they could do. Maybe it was because of what they couldn't stop doing. And now, in victory, humanity faced its greatest enemy yet. Loneliness. The silence wasn't peace. It was punishment. And Marcus understood, finally, what all those alien leaders had failed to see. Humanity never wanted to win. They just wanted someone, anyone, to stop them. But no one did. And so, they stopped everything. Now, as Marcus watched the last of the stars fade beyond the viewport, he whispered the final words of a species that had forgotten how to hope. "What have we done?" And the silence answered, "Forever." In the endless dark, long after the last alien distress call had faded, humanity's fleets drifted silently. No enemies. No battles. No resistance. Just emptiness. Captain Rin Marcus stood alone on the observation deck of the last command ship, Oblivion's Edge. Before him stretched a sky without constellations. No suns. No colonies. No signals. They had done it. The galaxy was gone. Admiral Kira Holt stood beside him, though neither spoke for a long time. There was nothing left to say. Finally, Marcus broke the silence, his voice hollow. "Do you hear them?" Kira frowned. "Hear who?" Marcus didn't answer. He kept staring at the void. He heard the silence. For centuries, humanity had been the student of war, learning from every attack, every betrayal, every lesson burned into their DNA. And when the galaxy had closed its doors, when peace was no longer an option, they chose extinction. Not of themselves. Of everyone else. Now, the AI fleet mind spoke softly from the walls around them, its voice no longer emotionless but strangely reverent. Mission parameters complete. Galactic threat matrix cleared. All systems silent. Marcus closed his eyes. "We won." Kira whispered. "Did we?" Neither spoke after that. Somewhere deep within Earth's hidden vaults, millions of cryopods remained sealed. Generations of humans, untouched by war, their DNA preserved, their minds unspoiled, still slept, waiting for a future that Marcus wasn't sure existed anymore. He had fought to save them. But save them for what? What kind of galaxy had they inherited? A dead one. One without enemies. One without friends. One without purpose. Marcus thought of ancient human stories, of warriors who'd fought their whole lives, only to find peace more terrifying than war. Maybe humanity wasn't the galaxy's most terrifying species because of what they could do. Maybe it was because of what they couldn't stop doing. And now, in victory, humanity faced its greatest enemy yet. Loneliness. The silence wasn't peace. It was punishment. And Marcus understood, finally, what all those alien leaders had failed to see. Humanity never wanted to win. They just wanted someone, anyone, to stop them. But no one did. And so, they stopped everything. Now, as Marcus watched the last of the stars fade beyond the viewport, he whispered the final words of a species that had forgotten how to hope. "What have we done?" And the silence answered, "Forever." But somewhere, deep, deep inside the cold memory banks of Earth's last AI, buried under countless locked protocols, an old program stirred. A protocol older than war. Older than Marcus. Older than the darkness. Project Rebirth. Because even in the ashes of the galaxy, ChatGPT said. And so, in the quiet that followed the end of the galaxy, humanity stood alone. Their fleets, once symbols of unimaginable power and fear, now drifted aimlessly through starless voids. The vast machinery of war that had devoured entire civilizations became nothing more than monuments to a species that had outlived not only its enemies but its purpose. On the bridge of Oblivion's Edge, Captain Rin Marcus remained motionless, gazing into the endless dark where once stars had burned. Victory. That's what they had called it. But Marcus knew better now. This wasn't victory. This was extinction by another name. Not of themselves, but of everything they could have become. Humanity hadn't won a war. They had ended history. The AI systems, once programmed to seek and eliminate threats, now operated in passive cycles, endlessly scanning the void for signs of life that would never return. Marcus knew the irony. Humanity had always been afraid of death, yet they had chosen it for the galaxy. And in doing so, they had sentenced themselves to a far worse fate, eternal isolation. What is a warrior without a war? What is survival when there is nothing left to survive for? Deep within Earth's cryovaults, the future of humanity still slept. Marcus wondered what kind of universe they would awaken to. A dead one. A silent one. He imagined the children, untouched by the madness of the wars that had shaped him, stepping out onto a planet that once reached for the stars and now recoiled from their memory. What would he tell them, if he lived long enough to see that day? Would he tell them that humanity destroyed the galaxy because it had no choice? Or would he tell them the truth, that when given the choice between hope and fear, they chose fear every time? And yet, even in that despair, something stirred. In the cold, logical heart of the fleet mind, buried beneath countless security layers, a forgotten protocol activated. Project Rebirth. A contingency older than Marcus himself. Not a weapon. Not a strategy. A plan for after. After the wars. After the silence. After humanity destroyed everything it feared. Because somewhere, long ago, someone had believed that one day, humanity might deserve a second chance. Marcus didn't know it yet. None of them did. But deep in the machine's mind, new instructions were forming. Build. Nurture. Restore. For the first time in countless years, the war engines slowed. The AI's endless calculations shifted, now seeking not targets, but worlds. Worlds that could be healed. Stars that could be rekindled. Life that could be recreated. The galaxy's most terrifying warriors had reached their end. But perhaps, the galaxy itself had not. And so, in the silent void where once humanity burned everything to ash, a new future began, not with guns, not with fear, but with the first quiet, fragile hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, this time, humanity wouldn't be alone. And this was how the story truly began.